Shut up and sit down.
So this is going to be a little bit different, obviously. Are you on?
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, we're on.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, then that's great. Then I just blew the intro. Cut. Take two.
Yeah, okay.
So obviously this is going to be a little different, you know, with the weather and some people not being able to show up. We got a little bit more of an intimate room. But I am the Angry GM, and this is my Angry GM's GMing boot camp. The idea is to introduce people to getting behind the screen and running a tabletop role-playing game. If you've never run a game before, I'm going to tell you how to run your first game, and then how not to feel bad about it so that you'll run your second, third, and fourth games. A little bit about me before I launch into the spiel. Let's see, what is it now? 2019. So roughly 31 years ago, I was given a copy of a role-playing game called Lords of Creation by a cousin who went off to college and had no idea what the heck it was or what to do with it. But I went down to my local bookstore after I had read through it and said, man, I really wish I could do something with this, because it seems exciting. I went down to the local bookstore and picked up a copy of the Mensa Red Box of Dungeons & Dragons Basic Edition. And I read through it and I thought it was awesome. And I got two of my friends from school. I'm like, come on over, we're gonna play this game. And we're like, and the first thing we have to decide is who's gonna be the dungeon master. And they looked at me, and I was the dungeon master, and I have been behind that screen ever since. And I can't get out from back there. But that's okay, because it's better. So since then I have been running games pretty much every week for 30 years, barring a few breaks. So I'm a little committed, some might say obsessive. About 10 years ago I started a website called The Angry GM, just as a hobby. And I just, you know, I was doing some rules hacks, I think for that point just 4th edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Doing some rules hacks, putting out some advice, little stuff like that. And people really resonated with my basic advice, because what became my thing was breaking down how to run games into their really, really basic core stuff. Stuff that the Dungeon Master's Guide won't tell you. But before I go into that, so I assume that you're both interested in running games. Have you run tabletop role-playing games before?
Yeah.
Yep, okay. A lot of experience, little experience?
Fair amount of experience.
Okay. So,
I quit around the time you started.
Okay.
And then I just picked up again. Yeah, I'm not that young.
Okay, you did see the beginner stuff right there in the description.
I did, but it's been a long time, and I just got back into D&D maybe 5 months ago.
Oh, good. Welcome back. What have you been running?
Mostly I've been running Savage Worlds.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Savage World's a fun system.
It was easiest to jump into as a GM, I think.
So. It really is. Yeah. It's a good system. Well, then I guess like we can play it a little more fast and loose instead of me giving the usual spiel, because I usually start here with the demotivational speech.
Oh.
Where I tell everyone, look, you're going to get behind the screen, you're going to run your first game, you're going to be nervous as hell.
Would you mind doing the whole thing? Because the reason, part
Sure.
of the reason I'm coming is not necessarily for me, but I run a game for kids at a library in my town.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and one of the kids recently went off to college, and he was asking me about, like, you know, what sort of campaign would be good for a GM, that sort of stuff. So I was like, I'm happy to hear you're recording this and going to post it, because I will definitely link him to you, and you know, because I would love it if you could go over this. I mean, if you don't mind going,
Not at all.
Going through your full spiel, because, like, you know, this would be great for him, and probably a bunch of other kids too. So.
Yep. In fact, don't run away when we're done.
Okay, when we're away.
I'll talk to you for a second. I'll make sure you have a link to it, and I'll help you out.
Thanks.
Okay, so then we will just do the whole spiel, which I'm glad to do anyway. Even though I tend to do extemporaneous and off script, and as a GM, you really have to be able to do that. But as I'm going to get to, you don't have to be able to do that first. Okay? So the thing is, I like to start with the demotivational speech. Because here's the thing, GMing is a skill. It's something you learn how to do. And the first time you do it, you're bad at it. Unless you're me. I'm a prodigy. I'm a genius, but don't measure yourself by me, okay? You know, measure yourself by who you are. and you're not me. So the thing is, you're going to want to get back behind the screen. Maybe you've seen Dungeons & Dragons played on YouTube, or you've heard about it from some friends, or maybe you've even tried to play a game and now you're ready to run your own game, or you tried to run a game and it didn't go so well, and now you want to take the next level and jump behind the screen. So the thing to keep in mind is you're going to be nervous before you even start. You're going to be terrified because this is a performance more than anything else. You're up in front of a group of people who are all relying on you to give them fun. And you want to give them fun because you're a normal human being, and every normal human being, you want to give your friends stuff. That's one of the reasons why you get behind the screen, is because you want to perform. Another reason is because you really like the spotlight and you love attention. That's why I'm here. But the thing is, people are going to tell you, like, especially if you go online and you read a lot of advice online, they're going to tell you, don't worry, everybody's not judging you, and don't worry, you don't have to get it right the first time, and don't worry, you'll do fine, just be yourself. That's all wrong, okay? Everybody is judging you. You're always being judged. I mean, that's just the sad truth of the world, is you're always being judged. But here's the thing, it's okay, okay? Because you're going to have to get used to being judged as a GM anyway. It's part of the performance. And just like with anything else, you're going to get good at it the more you do it. There is one way to guarantee you won't get good at it, and that's to stop doing it the moment it gets hard. Okay? The other thing is that hopefully these people in front of you are your friends. And just like you, when you see your friend and they're doing something and you're like, I don't know if they're really good at this, you're not going to say anything. Most people aren't jerks. Most people. Again, unless you hang out on the internet. But most people aren't jerks. Your friends are going to give you a pass anyway. Because they're going to understand that you're going to get good at it. And you're going to tell them, hey guys, this is my first time doing this. So if it's not great, just cut me some slack. And I promise we'll do it again and again, and it'll get better and it'll get better. The other great thing about role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, Savage Worlds, Star Wars, and the thousands of other games out there is that even a bad gaming experience is a lot of fun. Okay, because unlike any other experience, like a video game, a movie, a book, whatever, when you're playing a role-playing game, you have a lot of freedom to do whatever you want. You never run into that place like in Skyrim where you can't climb the mountain any farther because they programmed an invisible wall there because they didn't want to animate the other side of the mountain. Okay, you'll never run into that. You'll never run into a situation where you can't pick the dialogue option you want because they only did the sarcastic option, the friendly option, and the mercenary option, whatever they are. Those three options. You could be nice, you could be a jerk, or you could be nice but be sarcastic about it. Okay, you can say anything you want in a role-playing game. You have all that freedom. So the players are going to have a blast even if you blow it. And most of the time, you're going to know you blew it, and they're going to have no clue. Which leads to the harsh truth, and that is you are always your own worst critic. Okay? Now, all of that is the demotivational speech. That's just warning you. You're going to walk away from that thinking, man, I did a terrible job. I blew it. I screwed up this rule. I didn't take into account their choices well enough. Whatever. That's natural. Everybody has that. And you'll have that for a game or two or three after that too, or 5 or 10. Eventually it goes away, I'm told. But I've been doing it for 31 years, and I still have that. I still walk away from games saying, you know what, I really blew this scene, or I really should have done this better, or whatever. Okay, because it's natural to beat yourself up. But my players keep coming back, and yours will too, hopefully. They should. Okay? And I'm going to give you some advice to make sure that they come back in a moment. This was all just the demotivational part. This is the know what you're in for. You're gaining a skill, you're learning how to do something. If you learn how to do it and you get good at it, it's going to be some of the most fun you'll ever have in your life. I've been doing it for 31 years, and gaming has given me all of the best memories that I have. Most of the best memories I have in my life, because my girlfriend is sitting back there, so I'm contractually obligated to put her at the top of the list now. Most of my best memories and all of my best friends, including my girlfriend who I met through gaming. So You're going to get a lot of good out of it, but it's about what you put into it, okay? That's the demotivational speech. And now we'll cut down to the nitty-gritty, okay? Basically, whatever you think you know about role-playing games, I'm going to tell you right now, forget it, and I'm going to give you the big secret of a role-playing game, because every role-playing game, whatever you decide to run, be it Star Wars or Pathfinder, Dungeons & Dragons, Savage Worlds, Dungeon World, one of those insipid story-based games like Fate, whatever it is that you want to run, they all work exactly the same way. They play out as a conversation, okay? And it is your job as the dungeon master, or the game master, or the storyteller, or the story keeper, or whatever pretentious title the game gives you, it is your job to keep that conversation going. Because the people out there at your table are really bad at keeping conversations going, okay? And the conversation will always go like this. It will start with you setting the scene. You are walking along through the dark forest, the trees pressing closely, the sun is sinking low in the horizon, the shadows lengthening as night sets in. You hear the howling of wolves in the distance. A chill runs down your spine. Suddenly, there's a rustling in the trees. That's called setting the scene, and that's part of one of the two most important game mastering skills, narration. Your job is to narrate. You are the eyes, the ears, and brains of your players. You have to create the world for them just by talking it out, and that's the only power you have, by the way, is talking. You create the world, you set the scene, you set the mood, and you tell them what they know, okay? And that's an important thing. You always want to communicate clearly, okay? And this is where one of the pitfalls of running your first game will come in, is that when you start running a game, you suddenly think you're Shakespeare or Chaucer or that woman who wrote the books about the wizard kid who went to school and threw a ring into a volcano, whatever. You know, and you're going to try and tell your best story. You're going, as you meander through the deep, dark forest filled with deciduous conifers, a whistling zephyr drifts out from between the trees. The cumulonimbus clouds thicken overhead, pregnant with coming rain. The distant, sonorous rumble of thunder is going to, and you know what? That doesn't sound natural at all. It didn't even sound natural when I do it. I can't do that. That sounds terrible, and it confuses people. Okay, nobody knows what a cumulonimbus cloud, okay, some people know what cumulonimbus clouds are. They're not people you want to hang out with. Okay, and some people, there's already some people, by the way, who are saying, you said deciduous conifer. Those are two different things. He knows that, right? Yes, I do know that. But the point is, if you try to speak in a way that isn't natural, it's not going to work. And you're going to confuse people. So the first thing you want to do is set the scene by speaking naturally. Speak clearly. Use whatever details feel normal to you. At my game, I describe distances sometimes in terms of football fields, or in the side, or in a large house, or a bedroom. Okay? Now, I don't know about you, but I have never seen a football field in Faerun or Greyhawk or any of the D&D worlds. It's anachronistic. Nobody cares. Because people just use that in their head and then they can picture what you're talking about. The key is speak naturally. So you set the scene. Now I have painted the scene. Okay, but that's still not a conversation. All I've been doing is a speech. Okay, now comes the next part of narration. This is the most important, is you have to invite the players to take an action, to do something. A lot of GMs will stop there and be like, and what do you do? And then the players, well, you said something about rustling trees, and I think there was, someone's pregnant, right? I heard pregnancy. Should we help her? You have to invite the players to take an action. It's not enough just to ask them what you do. And a lot of GMs make that mistake. So I said there was a rustling in the trees, right? But that's not enough. There's a rustling in the trees. Suddenly the trees part and you see a pair of yellow beady eyes. Now what do you do? Oh, it's a monster. I'll draw my sword, get ready to attack. I'll ready a spell. You give the player something to react to, and this is an important trick that you're going to use over and over again. Which is why when you set the scene, you always want to end on the most important thing, the urgent thing, the thing that is going to demand that they take some action. I do this thing, and my players make a lot of fun of me for it until they get used to it and understand why. So they'll walk into a room, like, okay, so the wooden door of the crypt creaks open, and inside you see a broad room with a high vaulted ceiling. Ancient sarcophagi line the walls along either side, and the hallway continues down into the darkness. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling. Oh, and in the center of the room, 3 flaming skeletons are getting ready to launch their fireballs at you. And I'll have players who turn to me and they're like, so we noticed the cobwebs before we saw the flaming skeletons. And no, obviously you don't. You're gonna, like anybody who walks into that room is gonna notice the flaming skeletons first. But the reason you end with that detail is you think of it like a ball that you have in your hand. And now you're gonna throw it to the players, because it's a conversation ball. So now it's like, oh, and there's flaming skeletons ready to launch fireballs. Your move! Good luck! Hope it turns out okay. Okay, and that's why you end on the detail where somebody can pick it up. Okay, and then someone will pick up that ball. I'm going to draw my sword and run forward at the skeletons. I forgot what I said. Run forward at the skeletons. This is why I don't use many props. So then I catch the ball. I say, okay, you draw your sword, you run forward at the skeletons, you draw your long sword back, you slash out, make an attack roll. Okay, and now we've moved into the other GMing skill. Because, as I said, there are 2. You have narration. Narration is, you set the scene, you ask the players to act, you throw them the conversation ball, and then they're going to hopefully throw that ball back to you, and they're going to say they're doing something. This is called action adjudication. At least that's what I call it, because I like big, pretentious words. Because I'm still a blogger. In the day of YouTube videos, I still do a blog, so I like lots of big, pretentious words. So action adjudication is where you need to decide what happens when the players do something, whatever it is. And that's your job as a GM. Now I'm going to let you in on a secret. I think I forgot. It's usually at this point where I do a big dramatic thing, where I take out one of the rule books, because you know these rule books like 300 pages of rules, and I take out the rule book and I say, okay, see this thing? Forget it. Okay? Except don't forget it. I'll get to that in a second. Okay? The rules are a tool. This is something that new GMs need to be told that the rule books won't tell you. And in fact, the reason I'm here is because of all the things the rule books won't tell you. The rule books will tell you all of the rules of the game. They will tell you what it means to have a strength score of 17. They will tell you what spells a second level wizard can cast. Okay? They will tell you the statistics of those flaming skeletons. They do not tell you your job is to narrate the game. Then you invite the players to act, then the players will act, and then you have to adjudicate the action. The rules come in at the point where you have to adjudicate an action and you don't know what to do. Okay? And I'll give you a perfect example. Okay? So we'll set the scene. The sun rises, you're in your in-room, you stayed the night passed uneventfully, everybody is safe, happy, and healthy, well-rested, and ready for their adventures. What do you do? And then the player says, I'm going to get up and climb out of bed. Okay. The player has just declared an action. They have stated something they want to do in the world. And now it is your job to determine the results. They're climbing out of bed. Probably that's just going to turn out fine. Okay? Occasionally you will fall out of bed or you stub your toe, but that's kind of insubstantial and it really doesn't affect the game in the long run. Okay? It's not like, three encounters down the road where they're running from a red dragon and the fighter is running really slow and he's got a limp and then all of a sudden he has a flashback to stubbing his toe in the inn that morning just before he gets devoured. That does not happen. Okay? The point is, though, when a player declares an action, the first thing to do is to use your brain. Not the rules, your brain. Because a lot of times you can determine the outcome without even needing the rules. I climb out of bed, great, you're standing on the floor. You know, I pull on my pants, great, they're on. You know? You only go to the rules in certain situations. And I'm going to come back to that, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 3 or 4, it changes a lot. I have 3 or 4 key rules to decide when you need the rules. But the point is, when a player says, I do this thing, your job is to think about it. What is the player trying to accomplish in the world, and how are they trying to accomplish it? Okay? I run forward and I'm slashing at the skeleton with my sword. What is he trying to accomplish? He's trying to kill the skeleton. How is he trying to accomplish it? With a big sharpened piece of metal. That's it. And now you have framed that action so you know what's trying to happen, what the player's trying to make happen, and how they're trying to make it happen. And then you engage your brain. Can this work? Yeah, well, it sounds good. And then, if you get to a point where you don't know whether it would work or whether it wouldn't work and how well it would work, then we go to the rules. That's why you have the player's handbook for Dungeons & Dragons, which will tell you, okay, when a player makes an attack against a monster, they roll an attack roll, which is a d20 plus their strength modifier, plus their proficiency modifier if they're proficient with the weapon. Unless they're using a finesse weapon, then they could use their dexterity modifier. And you compare that to the enemy's armor class. If it's equal to or greater than the armor class, they have hit, and then they do damage, roll the damage die, plus their strength modifier. And then subtract that from the monster's hit points. If the monster's hit points are reduced to 0, the monster is killed. If not, the monster gets to take a turn down. Okay, that's all in the rule book, and you don't need me to tell you that crap. You do need to read the rule book. I mean, I'm sorry, there's no way around that. And this is where another piece of bad advice will come in. If you go online looking for advice, how do I GM on Google, GMing advice, you're going to find a lot of people that say, don't sweat the rules. You know, don't worry about learning the rules. That's bad advice. I'm going to tell you why in a minute, but I just want to get back to this basic process, okay? So, players have taken an action. I make this, I attack the skeleton with my sword. Now you're thinking about it. Okay, they're trying to kill a skeleton, they're trying to do it with a sword. And this is where my questions come in. This is what you want to ask yourself. And again, this is before the rules. You do not need the rules to get to this point. You have already started running your game. There is role-playing happening, people are having fun, and you have not even cracked open that rule book yet. Okay? So now you get to this point, the player declares that action, and you have to ask yourself, okay, hey, how are you? So you ask yourself, can this action really succeed? Could the player actually accomplish what they're trying to accomplish with the action they have described? Can you kill a flaming skeleton with a longsword? Sure, why not? Okay, that's the first question. The second question is, could it fail? Could you actually swing your longsword at this skeleton and not destroy them, not kill them? The third question is, and if they did or didn't fail, would it matter? Is there a risk or cost or consequence or something? Okay, so that attack with the flaming, or the attack on the flaming skeleton with the longsword. Simple, so I'm running forward and slashing with my longsword at the skeleton. Fine, we've gone through, what are they trying to accomplish? Kill the skeleton. How are they trying to accomplish it? By swinging a longsword at it. Then we get to, can it succeed? Well, yeah, sure. You're swinging a longsword at a skeleton, it could break it. You know, and then we get into something they don't have skin, and they're not going to get cut, and they're not going to feel the longsword as much, and then we get into like D&D 3.5 and Pathfinder territory, and that's just a giant headache. But for the most part, you're just using your brain right now. You don't care about the rules. So it's just, yes, a longsword swung at a skeleton could kill it. Could it not? Yeah, the skeleton could jump backwards. The attack could miss. The attack could glance off its scapula, or whatever bone I'm thinking of, because I don't know human anatomy. And I'd even say it was a human skeleton anyway. It could be anything. But yes, it could fail. And now the question is, does it change anything if it fails? Is there a cost or consequence of it? Well, yeah, if you don't destroy the skeleton, that skeleton's coming back to dead. Right? So yes, there is a cost or consequence. And when you've gotten through those 3 questions, then that's when you go to the rules. That's when the rules are there to tell you, okay, if there's a situation where something can succeed, and it can fail, and there's some sort of cost or consequence or risk involved, then roll the attack roll, add your strength modifier, add proficiency modifier, compare to armor class, do damage, yada yada yada. Here's how you resolve it. Okay? That's what the rules are there for. The rules are there for only a very small part of the game. The part of the game where you have used your brain as much as possible and you get to a point where, I don't know how it would turn out. I really don't. Then you use the rules. You have to know why the rules are there, but you do also have to know the rules. Don't let anybody tell you you don't need to know the rules. And again, I'm going to come back to that because I'm going to give you the 3 most important aspects of a role-playing game in a second. So now you've decided what happens. And you tell the player, okay, yes, the die gets rolled and it's 6 damage. So okay, as you swing your longsword, the skeleton reels back as you rake it across its ribcage, shattering several of its ribs. It staggers back, the flames wreathing it flicker as it is weakened, but it is not killed. And then it redoubles its efforts to attack you, lunging forward. And then you turn to someone else at the table and you say, okay, the fighter has attacked the skeleton is about to attack the fighter back. What do you do? And then the cleric will say, I will try to turn undead. That's something clerics say. Okay, and now you say, well, you're going to turn undead, what do you mean? And they say, I'm going to hold up my holy symbol and say, be gone, skeleton. Can that work? And then again, you go through the whole process again. Can it work? Well, yes, that's something that clerics can do. You kind of have to know the rules for that one. Okay, and that I already made a liar of myself because I said you only need the rules when you use your brain. But sometimes the rules will also tell you what things are possible in an impossible world. Okay? For the most part, when you're running a game, your brain will get you most of the way there. If I jump off a cliff and I'm hoping to flap my wings and fly away, we all know how that's going to work out because gravity is a thing whether you're in Faerun or on Earth. If you're a 5th level wizard though, 7th level wizard, fly is a 5th level skill, 7th level wizard. If you're a 7th level wizard, you cast fly first and then you are going to fly away. So sometimes the rules are there to tell you the impossible things that are possible in the world. But barring those circumstances, the rules are just a tool after you have used a brain to figure out the things you can't figure out. So, you describe the results, invite someone else to act, they act, you describe the results, invite someone else to act, they act. Do this, let's see, 5 rounds per combat, 6 combats, so that's 30. Plus incidentals, so let's say another 30. Do that 60 or 70 times, you've got yourself a 4-hour game session. And that's game mastering, okay? And that's all there is to it. You narrate, you set a scene. You give the player something to react to. You ask them what they do. They say what they do. You listen, you say, can this work? Can this not work? Is there a risk? Okay, roll some dice. Here's the results. And then it just leads into each other. That's what I mean. It's a conversation. It's just a ball being thrown back and forth. There's a monster jumping out at you. I attack the monster. You hit the monster and kill it. Awesome. There's 2 monsters left. What do? I'll run forward and attack one of the other monsters. Excellent, because apparently this party is full of fighters. I'm that creative. It's 8 in the morning, so usually I'm better at this. Okay, that's everything that game mastering entails, and that is every role-playing game ever. Barring that one ridiculous indie game that is like, the friends at your table will resolve your action for you, or you'll have a bestie at the table and a rival at that. I can't remember what game that was, but there was one role-playing game where it was actually everybody picked a best friend at the table and everybody picked a rival at the table, and then the resolution would be like your bestie and your rival arguing over whether you got to succeed or not. Which is a fantastic system that is so much more fun than rolling some dice. Watching your friends argue about whether to screw you. Great system. But that's every role-playing game ever. Okay? Narrate, invite the players to act, adjudicate the action, describe the results, go again. Be clear, be concise, speak natural, use your brain, don't go to the rules until you need the rules. And sometimes you're going to find the rules don't work, and then you're going to have to use your brain some more. It's like, I'm going to attack the eel that's underwater attacking the fighter by throwing a fireball from the shore. Fireballs work underwater. Do not, by the way, search that question on the internet. Okay? There are some hotly contested questions. And one of them is, can you throw a fireball from on land into the water? It's insane, because people love to argue about it, and the rules don't describe it because the rules can't describe everything. But the correct answer is, that's why there's a GM at the table. Okay? A GM is actually a game mechanic. You don't realize it, but when you get behind the screen, you are part of the game system. You are part of the rules. You are just as important a part of the rules as the player's handbook or the Dungeon Master's Guide or the dice or the miniatures or the map. Some GMs stop at being just about a battle mat in terms of using their brains, but you do your best you can. And that's the key. As a GM, I mean, the reason I talked at the beginning of this about how when you're playing a video game, you will find the limitations very quickly. You'll find the invisible walls. You'll find the dialogue choice that wasn't programmed in. You'll find in the crafting system the one combination of ingredients that you think should lead to something that doesn't. In a role-playing game, you don't have that problem. Okay, there are no invisible walls, other than the GM slapping you and saying, the adventure is to go to the castle. Why are you trying to go chase that cow? Okay? But apart from that, there are no invisible walls. There are no dialogue options that haven't been programmed. There's nothing like that. Everything is possible, and the reason it's possible is because part of the game is a human brain that can make up stuff as fast as you can. So when somebody invents some crazy, I want to swing off the chandelier and kick the skeleton's head clean off. Can I do that? Sure, why not? Can that work? Sure. There's no reason why it couldn't. Could it fail? Oh yeah, and it would be hilarious if it failed. Is there a risk? I can think of several. So yes, that can happen. When you flip through the rules, you're going to find that there's nothing in the rules that specifically says what to do when the players swing off a chandelier and try to kick a skeleton's head off. And you're going to have to make your best judgment. And that's your job. That's the duty you accept as a GM. You are now part of the game system. You are the thing that facilitates all of the stuff. You're the PlayStation. Okay? You're now running the game. You are literally the computer, but you're the best computer in the world. Except at math, and chess, and Jeopardy. Computers are catching up, but you're still the best computer for running a role-playing game. Okay? So now, understanding all of that, I'm going to briefly mention what I consider to be the three most important aspects of the game that you have to keep in mind at all times. And then I'm going to tell you how to actually run your first session. Because right now I've just been talking a lot about this is what you're going to do when you sit down at the table. But how do you get there? Three important things to remember when you're running a game. These are the three things that make a role-playing game a role-playing game. Okay? Number one, consistency. I put this at the top of my list, and I know other GMs will disagree, and they'll say things like, tell an interesting story. Okay, tell an interesting story, by the way, is the worst advice you're ever going to get. What the hell is an interesting story? How do you tell an interesting story from a bad story when you're in the middle of the story trying to make it up? It's like, what's going to be the most interesting? Especially if you don't know what the characters are going to do. I've had some of my most interesting stories grow out of things that were completely boring things. Like you get to the dock and the boat hasn't arrived yet. And then all of a sudden, it's like, just in the wasting of time, an hour later, the party is running from the flaming ruins of the city, screaming, it wasn't us, we didn't do it, So tell an interesting story is terrible advice. Consistency is good advice. Because your players, as I said, are relying on you to be their eyes, ears, and brains of the world. If you're not clear, and if things don't work the same way every time, they can't make decisions. And that's really important, that they be able to make decisions. You can decide the fireball will not fire underwater. It's fine. I think you're right, actually. The fireball would explode against the surface of the water. But that's just me. But once you make that decision, it's no fair when the fire mage is attacking the party 2 weeks from now and they're like, let's dive into the lake, he can't get us there. And it's like, I don't know, he launches the fireball and it goes right underwater. It's like, but last week the fireball didn't do that. The rules are partially there to keep you consistent. They're there so that the players know how things are going to work. so that they can make the best decisions they can make. Player looks at the flaming skeleton and they'll say, hey, I want to attack it with my longsword. If the rules say skeletons have resistance to slashing weapons because they have no flesh and they won't bleed, trying to hack through bones with a razor blade is kind of a waste of time, that's fine. It can also say, it's the force of the blow that really breaks the skeleton. It really doesn't matter if it's a sword or whatever. And the rules might say, yeah, forget resistances. And that's arguments that GMs will have about which edition to play and which rules to use and yada, yada, yada. It really doesn't matter. What matters is the players know what to expect when they swing that longsword at that skeleton. At least the second time. The first time it might catch them by surprise. And that's okay, because they're going to learn, and they'll learn from you. Consistency is important, and that's why I say you really do need to use the rules. And if you're going to change the rules, number one, the players need to be forewarned. It's no fair changing the rules and then not telling. It's, oh, no, I changed the rules that are in the books. Longswords don't work on skeletons now, sorry. But now you're standing right in front of the skeleton. Sorry, okay? So consistency. Number two is agency. Agency is the term for a character being free to act in a story. It's one of these pretentious literary terms that humanities people will go on about while they're making your latte. But it basically means the character is the master of their own destiny. It means things don't happen by accident. The character makes a decision, the decisions have consequences, the consequences affect the story. All of that is a fancy way of saying that when the players make a decision, it's got to have an impact on the world. If you throw them at an invincible monster that they can't hurt, so that you can have your awesome, extra come in and save them, I mean, you can get away with that once in a while. You really can. Okay, because you're trying to establish some NPC for later, and then when he turns into a villain, the players are going to be like, oh my god, because this guy has been saving us all along, and now he's the villain, can we even take him? It's okay once in a while, but I'm sorry, I got way distracted. Forget I even said that. No. Agency is important. When the players make a choice, it's got to have an impact on the story. The story has to be different depending on what they do. Even if it's just different in terms of, well, you either kill the skeleton or you don't. If you don't kill the skeleton, he runs forward and eats your fighter. These things happen. Okay? But agency is the thing. You don't want to step on your player's agency. That said, you don't have to worship at the altar of agency. You don't have to change the world to make the things the players want to do work. Okay? And that's why you have agency and you have consistency, and they sort of fight each other once in a while. On the one hand, the players want to be free to make their own decisions. On the other hand, you're trying to make a world that seems like a real world. You have to be consistent, you have to give agency. Sometimes that means you have to say no to your players because the consistency is more important. Sometimes it means you have to say yes to give them more agency with consistency, without worrying so much about consistency. It's always a balancing act, and you're constantly making those choices, and they're neither right nor wrong, they're just choices. They're just trade-offs. Some players don't care about agency, some GMs don't. They just want to run the wacky game. The party goes into the dungeon and just slays goblins left and right, and they don't care about the world outside. And then that's fine, then it's all agency, then it's just how awesome can you be in this scene. That's a fine game. Other people, they want to come out of that world, and then they want to go talk to the king and talk to the blacksmith, and they want to know the history of the 17 gods of the Flaneus or whatever, and they want those details to exist because they want to lose themselves in the world. And that comes down to the third thing, which is engagement. Okay? Everybody plays games for different reasons. But everybody needs to be invested in the game. And that's what engagement means. It means the players care about how the game turns out. Okay, they care. I mean, some of it, some engagement comes automatically. Because when you make a character and you bring them into this fantasy world and it's you who keeps them alive or lets them die, you kind of get engaged. Especially if you've been playing the character for 6 months and then they get killed. You're really engaged. Sometimes you cry. Making a player cry is all, forget I said that, okay. Engagement. The players have to be interested in the game. They have to care about the game. And every player has a different reason for playing. Some players do want to explore a world. They want a real world out there, and they want to poke into every crevice and find every freaking Korok seed that was hidden out there, even though there are 900 of them. That's unnecessary. Okay? Some players, they want to overcome the challenges. They want to play Dark Souls. You know, they want to kill everything, and you know, they want to feel challenged. They want to break a sweat. Some players, they want to express themselves through their character. They want to spend hours writing a backstory and describing, this is what my character's wearing today. You know, and showing off their story, and they want to be asked, you know, how did you come to know this knowledge, Piffle the Great? Oh, well, let me tell you, it's a fantastic story of my times at the Citadel when I studied under Master name I can't imagine at this point. Another GM can have a list of names in front of you. It's really hard to come up with names on the fly. But different players, different reasons for playing. And you've got to find a compromise between all of them. Sometimes, when you have a player who wants to express themselves, then when you try to be consistent, you're stepping on that player. Sometimes when you have a player who wants to explore the world and get to know all of the NPCs, for whom consistency is vitally important, because they have to understand the motives of everyone in the world and why everything works the way it does, and you move the consistency down the ladder, then they're hurt. And so you're constantly juggling consistency, agency, and engagement. And you've got 5 people who all care about it at different levels, and you're trying to find that perfect balance. And that's why I said, when you sit down to your first game, that whole demotivational speech, you're not going to know any of this. I mean, you know it now because you listened to me, unless you checked out 45 minutes ago, and I would not blame you. But you're juggling these things, and you don't know how to juggle this shit. You probably don't even know half the stuff I just said. I'm sorry for the language, that was a mistake. We'll bleep it in post, right? We can do that, thanks. And that's why you don't try, not at your first session. Everything I just said after set the scene, invite the players to act, adjudicate the action, describe the results, yada, 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 forget it all for like 6 months. Okay, you want to run your first game, you want to get behind the screen. And the reason I didn't say it all to waste time or because I have to fill an hour seminar and I only have like 15 minutes of content. I said it all so that 6 months down the road, once you've got the basics down, you're like, oh wait, that angry guy did say something about engagement. And that's the problem with this guy, I'm not giving him enough fights. He just wants to overcome challenges. Or that's the problem with her, she's not telling enough of her own personal story. That's how I can fix that. That stuff now is just lodged in your brain, and it will come out when you need it. I have planted those seeds. But for right now, you need to run your first game, and you need to focus on just 2 things. Narration and adjudication. Those first 2 skills I talked about. Set the scene, invite the players to act, figure out what happens, use the rules as necessary, lather, rinse, repeat. So, how do you run your first game? I'm going to give you some advice that almost nobody else will give you. Because people will tell you things like, oh, write your own magnum opus first adventure and it will be wonderful because you're always better running your own story. And let the players create the characters for themselves because that's the best part of the game is creating your own character. All wrong. Okay? You are there to learn 2 skills. Narrate and adjudicate. And that's all you're there for in the first session. And as mentioned in the beginning demotivational speech, your first session's gonna suck. It's gonna suck. So you're just gonna have to lean into that. Okay? So what you're gonna do, you're gonna start with a published adventure. Pick something out. Go on Drive-Thru-RPG. Go on DM's Guild. Buy the terrible D&D starter set. Or I've heard less terrible, but I haven't tried it yet, the D&D Essentials kit. Or I haven't started with Pathfinder 2 yet, because Pathfinder just changed editions. But the first Pathfinder had a great adventure called Crypt of the Everflame. It was actually a really lousy adventure, but it was a nice, simple little first-level dungeon crawl. Very easy to run. And that's the point. You want something that doesn't require you to do a lot of heavy lifting. You just want to say, there's a cave over there with goblins in it. And that's the story. That's like the goal of the adventure. There's a cave with goblins. Excellent. That's a good first session. You're going to hand the players characters. Don't ask them to make their own characters first. The reason is because making your own character, someday it's fun. When you are an experienced gamer, making your own character is a lot of fun. You get to express your creativity, play the character exactly the way you like to, you get to optimize if that's your thing, however you want to do it. But if your players are new to the game and you're new to running the game, it's math and paperwork and making decisions that nobody understands the consequences of because nobody knows the rules but you. By the way, as a GM, nobody knows the rules but you. Okay, there are two types of players in the world. Optimizers, who want to get the most out of the game possible, who are not bad players, by the way, no matter what anybody tells you. There are optimizers, and then there's people who haven't read the rules. Those are your two players. So just get used to the fact that you are the one who knows the rules. Okay? And any player who quotes the rules at you, they're probably wrong. But just go with it anyway, at least at first. Okay, but the point is, hand your players characters, especially if they're new. You have a published module, they have published characters, nobody's emotionally invested, except just to have a grand old time. And why? Because that first adventure is going to suck. If you get yourself excited about running the first adventure in your grand epic story, and then it sucks, you're going to beat yourself up. If you ran some crap from Wizards of the Coast that they published, to get a starter set out before the game was even done, well then you're not going to care. You'll be like, damn, Wizards screwed it up. That's not my fault. You can say that to yourself. It's great comfort. It gets you to run your second adventure, But that's the thing. You're not emotionally invested because number 3, one and done. Do not continue the first game you run. And your players will beg you, no matter how much they beg you, don't. They're just, oh, this is great fun. I want to continue the adventures of this unpronounceable name you gave me. I want to see where they go next. Nope, sorry, it was one and done. But what if we start a new game now that I know what I'm doing, and you get to make your own character and give them your own unpronounceable name? Okay, that sounds cool. But no matter what, that first session you run, or the first game you run, which could take 2 or 3 or 4 meetings, but no matter what, you run it once, and then you kill it. Kill the world, kill the adventure, kill the characters. Then, if you start to feel confident in yourself, write something else. Write something on your own. If you feel ready for it, write something of your own. If not, run another published adventure for a little while. They're okay. I don't like published adventures. I like running my own stuff, but that's because I'm full of myself and I think I'm the only one who can write good material. Now, granted, there's a lot of objective, axiomatic evidence proving that I am the only one who can write good material, but that's an argument for another time. The point is, published adventure that does not have any heavy lifting, pre-generated characters, one and done, learn how to narrate, set the scene, invite the characters to act, adjudicate the action. Can this succeed? Can this fail? Is there a risk? Okay, I need dice. Describe the results, throw the conversation ball to someone else, and let them keep it going. And just keep that going as long as you can. And that's your first session. The last thing I'm going to say, this is the last bit of advice, and then one little motivational thing here I'm going to point out. Last bit of advice I'm going to give you is don't seek feedback right away. Okay? Feedback is terrible. GMs think they live or die by feedback. Feedback is awful. There are a lot of psychological reasons why people give terrible feedback. Okay, the simple psychological fact is people know when they like something. They can tell, did I like that? Yes, I did. Did I not like that? No, I did not. Okay? People do not actually know the reasons why they like things. And when you say a reason why you like things, it's actually your cognitive brain rushing to figure out what made your stupid brain happy. Okay? They've done functional MRI studies on this stuff, of how people make decisions. And they've discovered that when you're doing something, you have an emotional response. Your emotions light up. Oh, this is fun. Oh, this sucks. And then your conscious brain, the one that wants to have more fun and avoid more suck, sits there and says, okay, why did we like that? Why didn't we like it? It starts making up reasons. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Which is why if you ask people the reasons why they like or don't like something, sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's BS. Okay? People are absolutely horrible, by the way, at predicting what they'll like. Okay, and this is the thing that when you start, like, if you start doing your own material and then you start play testing it, you will learn very quickly where feedback is reliable and where it's not. Okay, if people explain to you what to fix the problem in your game, they're wrong. They can point out a problem. They're very good at spotting problems, but spotting the fixes and explaining why they're not good at it. So the point is, don't sweat feedback. And if you do want some feedback, stop at hey, everybody seems to be saying, man, that was great. Did you see how I killed that flaming skeleton with the longsword? You know, that means they had a good time. If they're talking about the game afterwards, they had a good time, and that should be enough feedback for you. Besides, you're going to be giving yourself your own feedback. And your own feedback is going to sound like this. Wow, you did terrible. You forgot everything that angry guy said. You didn't even run the encounter with the flaming skeleton. And didn't he tell you not to roll to stub your toe when you get out of bed, and yet you just got excited and threw some dice? Okay? Your brain is going to be giving you plenty of feedback. It's all going to be terrible, because your brain is your worst enemy. Okay? And because the game you just ran sucked, because it was the first time you ever did it. And nobody is good at anything the first time they ever did it. So here is my final piece of advice for you. When you sit down to run that first game, it is a foregone conclusion that your players are going to have a good time because role-playing games are fun. It is a foregone conclusion you are going to run a bad game because you have never done it before. And it is a foregone conclusion that you are going to walk away from that game, no matter how happy your players are, saying, I did a terrible job. This is the worst thing ever. No one will ever want to play with me again, and I should just go shrivel up in a hole and die. Okay? Those are foregone conclusions. It's going to happen to you. And anyone who says that their first GM experience wasn't like that, they are lying to you. So, if you're going to fail anyway, then it doesn't really matter what you do, does it? So you might as well go over the top. You're a GM. You're performing. You want people to be excited, and people are going to follow your excitement. You're going to fail. So fail gloriously. Make it the best damn failure you can be. Okay? Go over the top. Describe everything bombastic, but clearly but bombastically. Okay? Go over the top. Make it awesome. Because you're going to blow it anyway and you're going to hate yourself. So you might as well give everyone else a really good performance to watch. If you're going to go down in a fiery explosion that can be seen for miles away. And then, you know, do that for 30 more years and eventually you'll feel good about what you're doing. And that's it. Yep. So, that actually ran 55 minutes. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions? I think I covered everything. Yes?
What do I do if my players don't want to give up their characters at the end of their campaign?
Tell them no. Tell them, sorry, this is one and done. Okay? Seriously, you're the GM. If you have to entice them, you know, say, yeah, okay, you could keep this character I made for you, but it's actually kind of lousy and it just came out of a book and I really didn't think too hard about it and didn't give him much power. You can make your own character. Ooh, what about a pixie? Or what about a Goliath? Depending, judge the player before you suggest pixie or Goliath, you know. Because different people go the pixie route than the Goliath route. It's just, personality. But you're the GM, just say, look, I didn't have anything prepared for after this. And I want to run a new story in a new world, and I want you to have the opportunity to make your own characters. And they're like, I don't want to make my own character. That's math and paperwork. Okay, what am I doing, taxes? And to be fair, I find taxes fun, but then I used to be an accountant, so, I'm not to be trusted. But entice them. Say, and offer to make them a character. It's like, I don't want to make a new character. Fine, I'll make you a new character. I got it, because you're the GM. You don't do nearly enough for the game anyway. So. Anything else? Alright, so this has been the Angry GM's GMing Bootcamp. I'm the Angry GM. I do have a website, theangrygm.com. So feel free to check it out. I did actually come out with my first book recently. And that covers all of this and more. Because it was, basically that book was this seminar, but more so. And it is available for sale on my store. I do have a couple available for sale that anybody wants to pick one up.